Listen-only mode.
Welcome everybody to another session of one of our ongoing AutoCAD webinars. Today we're going to be talking about the AutoCAD Action Recorder, something that a lot of people may not even realize really exists in the software, and we're hoping to maybe at least open a few people's eyes to the tool and see if maybe people might have some ideas of how they would apply it. I'm Michael Calkins. I'll be your presenter today. Stan is not able to join us today, but we have Jennifer Hoskins here today. Many of you will probably recognize her. You've probably spoken with her on the phone, and if you attend our every other month AutoCAD answer session, she's typically here presenting with me as well. So looks like we're getting a few people here joining the group, so there's a couple things here before we get going. If everybody could, just leave this up here for a second in case anybody can't hear us. For those of you, just to make sure that we're getting good audio out there, if everybody could click on the raise your hand button, which will display on your GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar console. That helps us to make sure that we are in fact getting sound out there. Looks like a few hands are going up. Perfect. All right. Thank you very much, everybody, for doing that. You'll also notice there on the webinar console there is an Ask Your Questions box. Feel free to type in any questions you might have regarding, in this case, the Action Recorder. We're going to try and stick to that topic today. If you have any questions about other AutoCAD subjects, remember that next month we'll be doing AutoCAD Answers again. I don't have the exact date right now, but if you're on our email list, you'll probably get that here soon. So let's get into it here. So again, a lot of people aren't, from our experience, a lot of people aren't familiar with this Action Recorder and the tool that's built into AutoCAD. I believe it was introduced in 2009 or 10. Now I forget. I just was reading that. Now I forget exactly which release it was introduced in. But initially it was a little bit cumbersome to work with. You couldn't do a lot of editing to your recorded actions and things like that. But it's actually become a useful tool and somewhat customizable. So the point of the Action Recorder is really to automate repetitive tasks. Oftentimes we find ourselves in a situation where maybe we need to open a dozen or several dozen, 80 or 100 individual drawings and walk through them and basically repeat the same steps, 1, 2 through 12, over and over and over. The thing is, sometimes they're not the exact same results. Maybe you need to open a drawing or a series of drawings and edit the title block. You want to go in and change some objects, some properties objects in there, add a piece of text or something like that, and it might be unique to each of those different files. So the Action Recorder helps us to automate that process, or at least basically line up the steps in an order that we can repeat over and over. So one of the advantages is that we don't need to go and learn things like how to write a script or how to write list routines, because many of us don't know how to do that and really don't have time to spend learning how to write a proper list routine or how to create a script. It requires a little bit of programming knowledge, or a lot of programming knowledge and experience to get it working right. If you don't have a CAD manager in the office that you can task with that, then this can be a good way to help automate some of these steps that you're going to repeat over and over.
I know most of the lists that I see were created 10 to 12 years ago, and the person who created them, isn't with the company or isn't even around anymore. So there are a lot of legacy lists out there, and this is a great way to get around them.
Yeah, if you have some of those, the legacy lists and some of the stuff you find online, if you download some things, if you look at the dates, they were uploaded many years ago, and some of them could very well be obsolete due to enhancements to the software. If you don't have the know-how to go in and edit that script file or the list routine, then this might be a good way to still achieve the results you want. Another great thing is that when we are done with the action, when we're done recording the action, basically we refer to it as a macro. It's a series of commands and edits and those kind of things. Once we're done recording that, we can actually share the result with our coworkers if we feel like they deserve it. Maybe you don't want to. Maybe you want to hold it, keep it for yourself, so you're more productive than your coworkers. But that's not a nice thing to do. Share it with everybody. The result is it's recorded into a ACTM file, and that file gets saved by default. It gets saved into your roaming profile. So once you've recorded this, if you feel like it's actually going to be useful, or you know that somebody else in the office is going to actually be doing the same steps, maybe the next phase of the project, you got to go through and make the same edits, you can go find this little ACTM file. It's actually an XML file, and you can just copy that into the proper directory on the other computers, or potentially what you could do is save this to the network and just customize your path, change the path that AutoCAD goes and looks for to find the ACTM files. You can change that so it goes and looks at the network at a network location instead of on your C drive roaming profile.
And will you be showing where that gets saved to? Or?
Yeah, we can actually show, and I'll show you. This is actually, I like to show this a lot when we talk about path and pathing within AutoCAD. Usually what I do is go show, I'll show on screen where we can determine where things are getting saved. Things like where are my autosave files getting saved, stuff like that. It's always handy to know how to go detect that, how to find those paths on your own. So I'll show you that as well, where the roaming profile gets saved. So a few notes on the action recorder. So let me just talk about what the action recorder does for us. What we're going to do in a moment is we're going to hit a little record button. Actually, let me show you here. It's going to look like this. This is a screen cap of the ribbon. This is the actual the Manage tab on the ribbon, and there is an action recorder panel on there. We see there's a great big record button, and we're going to click on that. What we're going to do is then, or what AutoCAD is going to do, is start to track everything that I input into AutoCAD. It'll show me a little red record button by my crosshairs, and if I type a command, it will record that. If I decide to click on a command on the ribbon or a toolbar, it will record that. It will also, click back to this slide here, it will record many of your commands, but not all of your drawing settings necessarily will be recorded. So things like maybe your units. If your units are set to architectural while you record the macro, if you try to run this inside of a drawing with decimal units, then it might function just fine. It's just that you might not get the results you want. It'll actually run through. It just doesn't really care about the units. So several of your units will not get, your drawing settings and your system variables essentially will not get recorded. So you can actually build a command into your recorded action, like set var, or you could actually type the actual system variable and change the setting if you want to set a particular one to a particular on-off state or something like that. The things that do get recorded though are limited to the properties palette, the quick properties palette. So depending on which of those you prefer to use, you can open the full properties palette or use the quick properties. And the action recorder will actually record any settings changes you make in those palettes. So if you select the circle and open the properties palette and change the radius in the properties palette, it will actually record that. Same as the quick properties palette.
We say the layer properties manager too, so if you put a title block on layer 0 instead of on a depth points layer or no plot layer or something like that, your viewport window or something like that, you could set up a recorder to go in and update the drawing to have the viewport be on a no plot layer.
Yeah, so and actually what you could find is this exactly, if you have a bunch of drawings that maybe, an example of use of this might be you have a drawing that does not have maybe a non-printing layer built into it. Maybe it's a legacy drawing again made prior to the ability to create non-printing layers, and you'd like to go create a viewports layer in there and set it to non-print, non-plotting. Using the layer properties manager, we can actually record the step of creating the layer itself, and then you can continue on to use the properties palette and select the viewports, or maybe select all viewports, and have it then automatically change all of those to that new layer. So you can use a combination of those. It will also record any user interface element that starts a command. So we're talking about things like buttons on the ribbon and in toolbars. Anything that actually initiates a command is going to get recorded, even though a lot of times people say it's better to, and if you read any of the documentation, it'll say, if possible, try to type the commands on the command line. It will still record though, even if you don't know, because I think a lot of new users, and actually a lot of my students that I teach, I tend to teach to the ribbon and have people use the ribbon because it's actually a great interface, despite what many of you might think. The ribbon is quite useful, but if you're still using toolbars and you're clicking on buttons, and maybe there's a few tools that you're just not really familiar with the command line version of, you can still actually do a lot of the work through actually just clicking on buttons. What it does not record there, you see the last line there, changes in dialog boxes will not be recorded. So as an example, you might have to type the -purge command. Many people might not be familiar with this because, depending on how you were taught to use AutoCAD and when you learned it, the things like the purge command, things like I don't know, saving as and doing the save as, and different kinds of. For some reason offhand, I can't think of any other major dialog boxes that pop up. Maybe changing styles, dim styles, and text styles. Those all happen within dialog boxes. When you initiate the command, it actually starts a dialog box. AutoCAD is not going to record the changes you make inside of a particular dialog box. Actually, one example we'll see in a little bit here. I'm going to run an example recorded action, is that the action will actually initiate the insert command. So when you type I for insert, it doesn't just insert a block, it actually opens the insert dialog box in which you can select a block or browse for one to import it, to insert it. So you can still build the action that it initiates the insert command, but you still have to select it from a list. Now you could also do the -insert, I believe, and use, again, the command line version of the command. Or like if you actually wanted to create a common use of the action macro, or action recorder, is to create like a super purge. I've seen it referred to actually quite a bit in various places, to create a series of steps that maybe open a drawing. After it's opened, it'll go through and purge and audit and do a bunch of stuff with one click. So in order for that to work seamlessly, you actually have to use the -purge. You literally type a hyphen or a minus and then type the name of the command, and it will actually run that command on the command line. In the case of -purge, it also actually it gives you access to more types of elements that can be purged than the regular purge dialog box.
Like regapps. Regapps can only be purged out through the -purge or -purge command.
Correct. Yeah, registry apps are one of those things that I think about a year ago I did a webinar on cleaning up drawings that maybe have gone bad, and one of the things that we talked about in there was purging registry apps or reg apps. So we'll see those here in a little bit, just as an example of how we might use this, but they're kind of these hidden things in the background of your drawing, and getting rid of those will help to reduce your file size and improve its stability. So building this using this particular form of the command, -purge, is going to give you better access to some of those tools.
This sounds like a great tool for any OCD coworkers you might happen to have in your office that insist that when you exit a drawing, it has to be set to layer 0 as the current layer and has to be zoomed to 90%. I used to work with a guy that was like that. Every time you exited a drawing, it had to be set to layer 0 and zoom of 90% or else, So this would be a great thing for them.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what I did spend a lot of time, because I will say this is one of those things that it's a relatively new addition to AutoCAD. It's not something that in my professional life I've had, at least practicing architecture, that I've been able to apply a whole lot, but I've seen a lot of uses and looking back at things that I would do commonly, I've come across and come up with a lot of ideas, and that was one of them, actually, to have an exit routine every time you close a drawing. Exactly, zoom extents, maybe even run a purge, depending on the work you do, change certain things, change the current layer to a specific layer that everybody uses, whatever it might be. So a lot of different uses, and I'm always happy to hear would be happy to hear any suggestions or ideas, or if you're curious, if they're curious about whether or not this might work for a particular routine in their office, let us know. Maybe we can assist with getting that to do what you want, because we're going to see here in a little bit there are a few things that we need to be aware of.
And on that topic, Tara makes the suggestion -XR to bind all, so that would be definitely an option. If you needed to bind all the XREFs in a file, you could set up Action Recorder to go through and do that for you.
Yeah, I can do it on the command line as opposed to through the well, actually, I believe the XREF manager is now a palette, so it should actually record some of the information. I can't say it's going to record everything, and like I said, I haven't had a chance to try this in all situations and in all workflows, but we can give that a try, and we can certainly see if it will record the information, what information specifically it records. One thing to keep in mind when you're working on these is sometimes you don't want it to actually record a specific entry that you specify as you're working. You might actually want it to let you specify a new, say, coordinate every time you run it. And we'll see in a minute we can actually do that.
And then Will had one question about what ribbon tab is the recorder on, and now that you've got AutoCAD up here.
Yep, so here's AutoCAD. So I need to go to the Manage tab on the ribbon. Hopefully this is available to everybody. Again, this is, AutoCAD is customizable, so if you're not seeing a Manage tab on your ribbon, then it could be that your installation was built to be customized for your office. Perhaps somebody didn't want you using any of these tools. Actually, there's a lot of tools on here. We're going to come back and talk about some of these in future webinars. It's one of those tabs that I think a lot of people overlook because they figure that's the CAD Manager's tab. It's not something they're going to work with. But one of the things on here is this Action Recorder over here.
Real quick, Michael, if you jump up there and right-click on any of your tabs up on the ribbon, you can check mark which panels and which tabs you want to see. You can see Michael's got the 3D tools and the render tabs turned off from his ribbon. But you can check in there and see if you have the Manage tab. Maybe it's just unchecked at the moment. That's why you're not seeing it too. So.
Yeah, that's a good one to keep in mind. If you have, like me, I have a bunch of plugins, and I've got the Building Design Suite Ultimate and all these things that include a whole bunch of other panels and tabs here. I can just uncheck those and make myself a little bit more space up here if I don't need one of those particular tabs. But we're here on the Manage tab. We're looking at the Action Recorder panel over here on the left. And because I have some actions that I have pre-recorded, I'll see here in this little drop-down list, get this guy out of the way, I'll see something displayed here. Right now it says elbow, and I click that drop-down. I'll see that there's several of them which are available for me to use. These are actions. These are macros which I have recorded previously. And in this case, in the case of the cross and elbow and a couple of these others, these were actually macros which were shared with me. This was a little ACTM file, which all I had to do is somebody, we transferred over the network. I put it in the correct folder, and now I can use the tool just like the person who created it on their computer. And I'll see this list. If you're following along, if you've not used this before, this is going to be blank. You're not going to see anything except Manage Action macros here. We have on here a record button. We'll come back to that as we actually run or create our own macro. But when we hit the record button, we'll see that it actually will place a little red dot there at my crosshairs. It pops open the Action Recorder, slide out here, and it's going to show me my work as I continue along. As I'm recording, the panel will turn kind of this pinkish color. I'll get a stop button instead of record. If I hit stop, it'll ask me if I want to record anything. In this case, I'm going to just cancel because I didn't do anything. We have some other tools built into this, like the play. So this is what we're going to look at first. I'm going to take one of these actions, which I've already recorded, and I'm going to play it. I'm going to run the steps, or it's going to run me through all the steps to create, in a little bit, we're going to create an elbow part. I'll run through that. We also have some preferences here. You can click preferences, and you can change some of the options here after you recorded a macro. We have a Manage Action Macros button up here in the upper right. And this is one of the ways, it came up earlier, we're going to say, well, how do we figure out where these action macros are going? So once we've recorded them, or if we have some already installed, they're going to get listed here. Over here on the right, you see you can actually select these and You can copy one to make edits, rename it. You can modify certain properties of it or just flat out delete it if you no longer need it. But down here at the bottom, so if this is the way I reached this was by clicking this button over here, Action Macro Manager. Down here in the lower left we have this Options button. And when you select that, it's going to take you right to the Files tab. In your Options dialog box, we see Action Recorder Settings is selected. And here is the first option we have, Action Recording File Location. So when I expand that, I'll see that currently this is where it's saved under my username, App Data, Roaming, Autodesk, AutoCAD 2014, R19.1, and you support actions way down there. There's a lot of other stuff hiding in there too, I believe. What, hatch patterns is in the roaming, or is that on the local? No,
it's on the roaming.
Yeah, so
a lot of things in that support folder. So
yeah, I think fonts and hatch patterns and your AutoCAD LIN. Yeah, so that's a good one. This is a good one to kind of just try and memorize. I always have trouble remembering exactly where to go when I need this, so I usually come in here. So this is what I was mentioning earlier. This is a great place if you don't want to come this way. Just as kind of a quick aside, you can open up your Options dialog box any way you prefer. I'll just type OP, and you'll see this on this Files tab. If you're ever wondering where anything AutoCAD is using or looking for or creating and saving automatically, where's it going to? Come in here and take a look for the option like automatic save file location right there. And I'm just bringing that up because we had a call last week. Somebody's wondering where are those auto-save files, so they might be able to recover some work they'd lost. Just come in here and you can see exactly where your computer's set up to save those. But here is that Action Recorder Settings again, and this is where we're going to see mine is saving again to my roaming profile. If I click on that, I can come up here and browse and choose a different location. So if everybody in your office wants to share these actions after they've been created, you have maybe one person creating them for you and providing them to everybody else. You're going to repath this to maybe your your CAD drive on the network, and in that save a folder for action macros. All right, so let's get into actually seeing one of these in action. No, I guess I was going to say no pun intended, but I really didn't mean that one. That was intended as a bad pun. Let's see one here in use. When you have actions recorded, they're going to, and again saved in that proper folder, they're going to display in this list. Once you select one, so in this case I'm going to start with this elbow one. This is a seemingly complex, it's actually a fair number of steps built into one here. When I select that, if I expand that panel out for Action Recorder, I'm going to be able to see then, here's my elbow action, and it goes through and I can actually read through all of the steps which are part of this action. I'm going to go ahead and play the action and walk through it, and we'll come back and kind of examine what was happening as things went along, just so you get some idea of the types of tools or type of actions that get recorded. When I hit the play button, I actually built a user message into this one just so that I could remember to point out that this action will automate the process of creating an elbow part. Thanks to Brian Haley. I'm sure many of you know Brian Haley and listen to his Civil Chat webinars as well. Thanks to Brian Haley for providing this macro. This is one that Brian actually has put together for the purpose of building parts for the Part Builder Library. Is that what it's referred to as?
The CAD-1 Part Builder Library for Civil 3D.
CAD-1 Part Builder Library. This is something that actually, he has a lot of repetitive tasks to complete to create all these parts. He's got to create an elbow of all the different, every part from the catalog of a 4-inch, a 5-inch, a 6-inch, or whatever diameter elbow of 90 and 130, 135 degrees, and all these different things. So rather than having to do each of these steps manually, every single part, he's built a macro, and he's been nice enough to share it with me to show off. I think he wanted to show off his handiwork. So what happens when we start this, I'm playing the action right now, and I see this little symbol at my crosshairs. I'm not really sure what the symbol is supposed to represent. I've never known. It always looks like like a tuxedo shirt or something sideways to me. So what's happening is it's prompting me through the various steps which are recorded in here. I see it's saying specify length of line. So I'm going to go ahead and type 4 and enter. It's going to say specify next point. So it's just running through. So I'm going to say 4 tab 135. Enter, and it's kind of hard to see. There is actually a little itty bitty polyline down here. Zoom in a little bit. It takes me to the next step. What it did actually next was then launch. You can kind of watch it as it goes along over here. It launched the fillet command, and it's asking me for a fillet radius. In this case, we're going to use a radius of 4.81, and I hit enter again.
Wow, that's highly specific.
It is. These numbers are built from an actual catalog of parts. These are industry recognized, I guess, diameters or known diameters. It then launched me into the polyline. Notice it actually selected the polyline option for the fillet command and asked me to pick the polyline which I would like to fillet. If I zoom in here, I have to select this polyline I just generated. It then automatically takes me into, it goes and finishes that command for me, takes me into the circle command with the diameter option selected, and I'm going to specify a diameter also of 4.81. Finishes the circle command, takes me into an offset command and asks me for the offset distance. So this is, in this case, going to be the wall of my pipe. I'm going to select my circle. In this case, it does actually ask me to select the circle. And as you might have noticed, suddenly a pipe appeared over here. You can kind of see it over here. Well, that was, kind of a lot happened right there. What it did next is it actually, I'll come back and talk about what actually happened there. Why did this little elbow suddenly appear? And then it took me into the insert dialog box. So this is what I was saying earlier, that I can have it initiate the insert command, which opens the insert dialog box, but I cannot have it then record from within here the actual block which I'm about to go select. That would require me to code this as a command line. So I'm just going to go here and select the part I need. And in this case, because I know what this macro does, I know that I have to have a couple settings applied in here. Again, I cannot have it say come in and turn on specify and screen for insertion point and for rotation. I have to do that manually. And if we needed to, we could create some notes or something that would kind of inform us of that. I'm going to hit OK, and there's my little flange. Come over here. I'm going to apply that here to the center point there. Whoa, that's interesting. This always happens when I plug it, when I disconnect from our main network. It then actually allowed me to place that block, takes me into the next step, which is again to insert another one of the same blocks. Since I've already inserted it, I can just grab it and say OK again. We'll orbit around here, and again I'm going to pick the center here, and because I had actual rotation set to specify on screen, I happen to know that I need to rotate this 135 degrees. And when it all is complete, typically this is what's going to happen, or at least out of the box. It's going to say the playback of the action macro is complete. It's telling you there are no more steps. If you want to, if you're going to be using these a lot, go ahead and check do not show me this message again and hit close. And look at that. So if I had run through that without pausing to explain my steps, we would have seen that I could have completed this and maybe 6 others, all the various sizes that I need to create. I could have run through those and created these probably in the same amount of time it took me to walk through and explain everything. I could have created all the parts. So it does require a little setup time. I know Brian Haley, in the case of how he uses it, he's built a specific template in which from which he starts to use this. But you see it actually generated this pipe for me. Now what did it actually do? Let me select up here on the action recorder panel. I'm going to click the drop down, and this might be a good use of this. I'm going to drag this out. I'm going to undock my my panel, and I'm going to expand it out a little bit so that we can see what is happening in here. So let's go through the steps. So here's the top. The elbow is the name, and I see that I actually create a user message in here. We can add those to anything. That just kind of give me a prompt at the beginning, said what this is used for, whatever I want to type in that message. It launched the polyline command and actually specified a coordinate of 0, 0 for the start of the polyline. use the length option. It actually then specified a length. In this case, what's happening is that this has been paused. You see this little itty bitty, this little icon looks like a kind of a head and shoulders. It actually pauses for user input at this stage. So instead of using the default value which was initially used, I get to specify the lengths of my lines, and it finishes that command, starts the polyline command again, chooses the same start point, all these steps, and then launches the join command and selects the objects. And what's funny here is that at this step, somehow when you're recording, and even talking to various people, we're not really sure how it knows. Sometimes when you run the join command, if you select objects as you're recording, when you replay that action macro, it will actually do the same thing. It'll record, or it'll automatically select the lines which you selected previously. It filleted them together. It asked me for the radius option. It allows me to, again, there's that little symbol. It allows for me to enter the radius, chooses the polyline option, selects the objects again, and asks me to select the objects. It actually created a copy of the polyline. You might notice in here, anybody, if you've ever done any, there's that polyline running right down the center of the pipe. When you use the loft command, it actually deletes your polyline as your path. So what Brian's done in this case is copied the polyline so that we get polyline left over. Here's my circle command you saw me do. Here's the offset you saw me do. Here's what you did not see happen because AutoCAD did this automatically with no input from me when I ran the action. It started the sweep command. If you've done any 3D modeling, you know the sweep command is used to extrude a shape along a path. And it automatically selected the 2 circles, which I had just created in the previous step. It sweeps them along one of those polylines from a previous step, and then subtracts the first, the inner swept shape from the outer swept shape, and that's what creates the tube, the pipe shape. That's what we didn't see. That's when you saw on screen all of a sudden a little pipe just magically appeared, and then it starts the insert command, asks me to go and select one of these, go find the block I want to insert, ask me to insert another block, and then at the end what it's supposed to do is run a union on the previous, all the objects in the drawing. For some reason currently on mine it's not actually finishing the union properly. That's something I need to investigate maybe when I transfer to ODC. It's not actually unioning all 3 parts together, and that's what the last step is intended to do. So that's the basics of how, or showing you how a action can actually run and the steps that it can, the kind of steps it can record for you. I'm going to throw this back up on the ribbon so it's easier to pin it open. I'm going to close and find, I'm going to open another drawing here. We're going to record a few kind of, come on. We're going to record some steps I'm going to execute on a, yeah, I know. We'll have to call tech support about that. I'm not sure what's going on there while I'm computing that.
It's pretty sure it's because you unplugged from your secondary monitor.
So I'm going to open up. I thought I had just opened up.
Nice.
Yeah, okay, let's try this really. I'm just going to open a drawing here that is going to allow us to run a series of steps that I'm going to record. So an example here, this is an example of something that I might use Action Recorder for in my workflow. This particular drawing is a block. I downloaded this block from the seek.autodesk.com website. If you've ever used that, it's a good place for manufacturer-provided content. And when I got in there, I discovered, and looking around, that perhaps the drawing was saved like this. It's not quite centered on my screen. If I select one of the objects in the drawing, I'll see that it is created on a layer called seat. This is a common annoyance for a lot of us CAD users, is that we have blocks that have objects inside of them saved to layers that are not part of our standard. And for various reasons, it causes, it can cause all kinds of headaches. Maybe you prefer to draw everything on layer 0 and manage it at the block level. Maybe you prefer to put everything inside the block on a specific layer, manage it at the entity level. It's up to you. It's still up to you. We record our action macro to help us then fix these blocks to allow for that. So This is also, there's a few other things. I'm not sure, maybe, whoever generated this block didn't really take the time to clean up the drawing. Maybe there's a bunch of registry apps. Maybe there's registered apps, I believe is what it's, registered apps is what
registered applications, yes.
Maybe there are other blocks. Maybe there's bad layers in here that I don't want, other layers that didn't get, hey, look at that. There's all these separate layers in here. I don't actually want
15 versions of Romans S.
Oh,
textile.
yeah. On the annotate tab, maybe you go in here and find that there are no textiles. Well, I'm not sure that's possible. There we go. You might find that there's dimension styles and textiles and all this stuff that you just, again, you want to purge out. You want to clean up your drawing. So instead of doing this, maybe you're going to download a dozen of these. Maybe you have more than that. Maybe you have an existing library generated by, a whole bunch of previous employees.
Your ancestral blocks, because they came from, some guy 20 years ago named Bob.
Yep. You find them on a CD somewhere, whatever the case might be. So let's go through. So some of the things that we might like to record in here would be things like I want to zoom extents. I want to create a new layer called A-Fern. I want to then change all of these lines in my drawing to that layer, or maybe I want to change them to layer 0. And I want to run a purge and an audit before then closing the drawing and running it onto through the next, the same steps through the next block. So what we need to do to record this is go to the Manage tab, and we can start the record action here, the recording process, by just clicking the record button. And we are going to see it's pinned open, so we're going to see a list as it goes down of all the things that we do here. And don't worry if you make a little mistake. Sometimes you can remove stuff. If you miss an action, though, if you miss something, it's harder to add in to your steps than it is to remove from the recorded action. So one recommendation is to run through this a couple times without recording and write down the steps you're taking. Try and write down every single little mouse click and button and keystroke, and then we're going to record these. We're going to kind of use it as a script to play back and record. So I've started the action recorder here. I actually have a little list here. First thing I'm going to do is type Z for zoom. You see now over there it is in the list. I'm going to type E for extents. It actually chose that sub option there for the zoom command. Next thing I'm going to do is to create a new layer, and I could, if I wanted to, I could actually do this inside of the Layer Properties Manager. You can also type minus, so just to show this as an example, I'm going to type minus layer, and you see instead of popping open my Layer Properties Manager palette, it actually is going to run this on the command line. I see there's an option for new. I can type just the letter N. And you do want to type these. You can't actually select them from the command line. It will record that as well. And it says enter new name, so I'm going to type A-F-U-R-N and enter. And I'm going to hit enter to finish out of that. And you see over there in the action recorder it's listing all these. The next thing I'm going to do is to run the change properties command. Now I could select the use this in the properties dialog box. Actually, maybe I'll do that because most of us, again, a lot of us are not familiar with using the command line for, say, change properties. I don't usually type CHPROP to change properties. Well,
and note when you zoomed out there that it's recording that you changed the view of the drawing too.
Correct. So I just used my mouse, my scroll wheel there. It is going to record that view change. And earlier I had said, well, I wanted to zoom extend. So I could have, there's a few things I can do about this. I can delete this later. I could have actually put the zoom extents at the end of this set of actions to finish out. I'm going to type PR for properties to open the properties manager. I'm going to then select all, and this is going to be, I'm kind of straying from what I had written down earlier, so we'll have to work with this a little bit.
Uh-oh, on the fly.
Yep. Yeah, by now I should have learned not to do that, but I can come over here and you'll see that earlier I created my, earlier I created that A-Fern layer, and there it is. I can now select, after having selected everything, I can switch that to layer A-Fern, and then I'm going to hit escape to release that selection. And I'm going to then run a purge command. And this one I am going to actually do again on the command line. I'm going to type -PU. I could also type out the full negative purge. But if I type -PU, it will understand your aliases as you're typing them in. Notice though it did actually record -purge. So if by some chance you use an alias that's custom to your computer and somebody else runs this on their computer that doesn't have maybe C for copy, it's still they have the default C for circle, it will actually record the full command rather than the alias here. All right, so I said -purge. One of the options in the -purge command is to purge all. But notice there's all kinds of stuff. Most of it you're familiar with. There's layers and dim styles. There's also zero length geometry, empty text objects, and there's an option for all. Hiding back in here, let's see if I can get it to show, is reg apps. This is the one that this is the only way actually, the -purge is the only way to get to this reg apps. I won't go into what those are, but you do want to purge them out routinely. So I'm just going to select A or type A for all and enter. And the next prompt when you're running the -purge is enter the names to be purged. So this allows you to purge specific things. The asterisk is your wild card. It's going to purge everything, all names. This is sort of like the saying do not
Everything
confirm.
that's not in use in the file, mind you. So it's not, if you're using a particular layer or something like that, it's not going to purge out something that's in use in the file.
Yeah, this is what behaves the same as the purge dialog box. Only unused elements get purged, to use it's actually a Revit phrase, unused elements. But you notice here, I want to talk about what's happening here. There is a default. Remember, anything inside those greater than, less than brackets means that if you hit the enter key, that is the setting or the choice which AutoCAD is going to use. Mine is asterisk to purge all. I'm just going to go ahead and hit enter at this stage without typing anything. And because I'm recording this action, AutoCAD detected that I hit the enter key without typing anything on the command line. It says no value was recorded when you press the enter key. What do you want to do? It says the command was purge, enter it shows me the prompt, and then the current default value was this asterisk. I can actually say use the value that is current at playback, which is as I'm playing back and using the macro. I can also say use the current default value. So if you want to avoid doing this or having it pop up this particular dialog box as you're recording an action, you could say, you could either type the exact default value, you could type it in anyway, or say always use the value that is current at playback, which will actually then ask you, while you're using the action, it'll use a different value there. So I'm actually going to say use the current default value. We'll see over here in the recording that it recorded the asterisk, so it purged all. Verify each name to be purged, yes or no. Again, I want to type yes or no, or Y or N, so that it doesn't prompt me. I'm going to say no, I don't want to verify everything. And enter. It goes through now. It's recorded the actual purge command out here. It's purge everything out of there. And if I wanted to, I could also, let me actually do this. I'm going to go ahead and type audit. Fix any errors. Yes, I do want to fix errors. Enter. Okay, so it's run through and run an audit on this block. And if I wanted to, I could actually have it record my save as. So now I can actually, I'll go ahead and type save as. And I'll see that I created a clean blocks in here. I'll just rename, just go over the same one. And it did actually record the save as. It can't not, of course, record what I did in the save as dialog box, so it'll kind of stop at that point. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording. Now, once I've done all my changes, I just have to come back here to the Manage tab, and you might be switching from tab to tab as you're doing stuff. You might be having it record things that you're drawing from the Home tab. So again, when you're done with this, you have to go back to the Manage tab if you're not already there, and hit the Stop button here on the far left. Immediately following that, it's going to ask me to give this action macro a name. So I'm going to call this my block cleaner. And actually, I only put an underscore in there. For your names, one of the rules about naming your actions is that they cannot have spaces or special characters, which is kind of a common macro kind of thing or command rule when creating your own customizations in AutoCAD. So you have to put in underscores or no spaces or whatever you want. Here's the file name which it's going to create, and here's the location again. It does go ahead and show me the location. I can't repath it from here. Go ahead and add a description. I'd recommend adding a description. You can't see that anywhere. I'm not going to take the time right now. There's a few options here. Restore pre-playback view when pausing for the user input or once playback finishes. So once I hit the play button, do I want it to actually just restore my view back to whatever it was when I started the command? So whatever part of the drawing I'm looking at. If I uncheck these, it's just going to leave everything as it was when I started, when I finished, as it is when I finished. So if there are any view changes which are part of the action, it will just leave those view changes in place. There's this check for inconsistencies when playing begins. I'm going to hit OK. And there we go. So there is my block cleaner now. It recorded my block cleaner in this into that folder. It shows up. You see I already had one in there called block cleanup. And I'm going to go ahead and close this one. So let me just repeat that then. As an example, let me open up. Let's just pretend that we have a complete, whoop, that's not the one. Let's go back here. Let's open up, let's just say this is another one that I opened up. This is another file I've downloaded from the same location, and I'm in here and I realize, hey, you know what? I've got the exact same set of steps that I need to carry out. All I have to do now, rather than saying zoom extends and all those things that we just did, I can actually just select from the list my block cleaner action, hit the play button, and let me just point out a few things. Notice right now that I do not have a layer called A-Fern. I do have these layers that are prefixed with the letters or the word seat. So let's go to Manage, Block Cleaner, let's play. And just like that, it just took care of everything. It's asking me to give this guy a name. I'm going to cancel out of that just to go back in. It says the macro is complete. And I will see now, just to show you, I have 0 and A-Fern. I could have also had this maybe set. I could actually have it create the layer and set the color, those kind of things. I don't have any of those layers that were prefixed with the word seat. The properties of these objects were changed. Basically, everything in the drawing was changed to be on layer A-Fern. And it actually, you notice it changed my zoom level. It actually zoomed out. It didn't just zoom extents. It then zoomed out a little bit further. So what happened there is that when I actually scroll, when I was recording the action, when I used my scroll wheel, it recorded that view change. So let's take a look at how I can modify this action, this set of actions quickly to make it work a little bit more to my liking.
A lot of potential here.
Yeah, so this is then where a lot of the action recorder becomes a little bit more useful to a lot of people. One of the initial complaints was that the action recorder was not editable in any way. You had to get it right, exactly right, when you recorded it. And that's still somewhat true. If you forget a step as you're recording it, well, you're probably going to have to re-record all the steps. That's why writing down a script is important. However, little things like I have a habit, partly because I'm I don't know, just when I'm instructing, when I'm presenting, I feel like if I let the camera, the screen sit for too long without moving, that's a problem. So I tend to do this a lot, pan and zoom, and it actually records that in the action as a view change right here. So those kind of things, if I don't want it to be zooming and panning, I can come back to the action. I select the action I want to edit here in the list. I have to expand out the action recorder here below. And then what I do is I pin it open right here. Now let's get rid of the properties so it stops interfering. And there's my view change. I can right-click on that view change. These are basically how it records zooms and pans that you do with the scroll wheel. I can delete that. And it tells me, are you sure you want to delete that? Yes, I do. And I know that a view change isn't going to really affect how things are happening. However, if I want to modify things like perhaps I'd like to change a setting here, like when it asks me to specify the new layer, rather than specifying an actual layer. So what it did when I ran the layer command is it recorded the fact that I chose the new option and typed in A-Fern. I can switch this, and same thing happens when maybe if I was saying draw a circle in my drawing, and I pick a location, it's going to record the actual value which you use at the time of recording. But if I right-click on any of these settings, any of these commands, I can actually say pause for user input. And what will happen then when I run this action, and when I play this action, when it got to the step where it's saying create a new layer, so it ran through the previous steps and said, okay, time to create a new layer, instead of creating a new layer called A-Fern, it's saying, what would you like to create? Let's specify the new layer. So maybe this is going to be a little bit different every time you run it. Maybe not a fern, maybe it'll just be a furniture or just furniture, whatever layer you want to use. You can actually tell it to prompt you. When I call this, give it a new name here, and hit enter, it will run through the subsequent steps, change the properties, it did selected objects, and then it gets to the point where it's asking me to save as. Again, I'm going to cancel out of that. And it created, instead of creating a layer called A-Fern, it asked me what I wanted to name it, and it created a layer called Michael. You can also make a few modifications. I'm just going to go a few of these through some of the options we have to make changes here. You can go through, if you click at the very top of the action here in the tree, you can insert user messages anywhere along the line, or I can insert that user message right at the beginning. I can insert a base point. Base point would actually allow me to specify a point from which all the other measurements are measured, and then you can also say all points are relative. When you choose all points are relative, any of the coordinates which were specified in the during the recording of the action are going to be switched so that they are relative to the previous point which you clicked. So if you start the circle command somewhere in the middle of an action and you say specify, center point 10, 10, it's actually going to run that as not an absolute coordinate measured from 0, 0, but as relative to the last point which was clicked during that action. You can turn this off and have a combination of both relative and absolute coordinates built into the action. You can also, depending on the action you select, when you right-click, you can choose if user input should be specified. This allows you to specify maybe a length, a radius, something like that. Change the property when it prompts you for something, change what actually gets placed. There's also this option to say use pick first set. So what this is going to do is allow you, so if you set a pick first variable in here, or pick first option, sometimes when there's a command that asks you to select objects, what you can do is actually select the objects first, then play back your action, and it will use that set that was selected as the selection set for maybe changing properties. So maybe you have a series of objects in a drawing that you want to run an action on. You can go and pick them first. Say you have a bunch of circles you want to select, and then modify all of their diameters to 6 without having to select them individually during. You can actually choose this pick first. You can also have it prompt. I could say here instead, pause for user input, which would then let me go and select the objects during the playback. So it's, I guess it's kind of customizable however you want it to behave at that point.
Very cool.
So I do want to show real quick, I can actually go to, just want to show, I was going to have this pulled up already. Here's a quick thing. I'm going to actually go to options real fast. Files, action recorder settings, action recorder file location. I'm going to click on that, copy this path. Oop, can't go there right now. That's interesting. That's that's a new one.
Let's just try navigating there.
Currently not available. See, what was it again?
Users.
See users.
Your username.
My username.
App data.
App data.
Roaming.
Roaming.
Autodesk.
Autodesk.
We just have a few programs on here.
Yeah,
That's AutoCAD
that was
Architecture.
AutoCAD Architecture. Sorry, let me go back.
And that just,
And
apparently you're having some technical difficulties.
I'm having a lot of technical difficulties, so maybe
At least it's happening, at the end of the hour.
Yeah. So I have to go all the way down. I have to drill down into
Roaming.
Autodesk.
Nope, that's ink.
Yeah, I'm having some issues here that are not letting me browse backwards, and I'm clicking on the wrong folder. Yeah, this is not where I actually am at this moment, so not sure what's happening. So I was just going to show you real quick that we can grab that ACTM file. All you have to do is grab that. It's actually just its own little discrete object inside of there. And so if you receive a ACTM file, somebody else in the office is creating an action recorder. If you are creating one of these recorded actions and want to share it with a coworker, you're going to have to get it into that folder. And if you do that while they have AutoCAD open, it won't show up in this list. You're going to need to restart AutoCAD, and once it's in that folder, restart AutoCAD, and then it will pop up here in this list. So I now have all of these which were placed in there, which I can access. And anything I record myself will show up in that list automatically. Anything provided to me has to happen, requires a restart of AutoCAD for it to display. All right, so
so I think that's most of the questions. Jan asked if we would share the block cleaner. Just shoot us an email and we'll talk about that.
Sure, yeah, that's something we can walk through. That's yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe we'll just that simple little one that I created.
Our contact information is support@CAD-1.com. Our phone number is 303-217-5174. Michael's going to throw that up on the screen here too, I think.
Yeah, we also have
Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn.
Yeah, support@CAD-1, also info@CAD-1.com are good ways to reach us. Hopefully a lot of you have our phone number. Yeah, we're also on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, so find us on there. And also, if you are curious about what's upcoming events, I didn't get it put into this slideshow, but we will have we do have on our new revamped website, which is we just rolled out this week. We have a CAD-1 events page on there, so make sure to check that as well for upcoming webinars and other events like our upcoming Suites Camp Day for both the AEC industry and for the infrastructure, Civil 3D infrastructure design suite users and building design suite users. We're going to have a day-long kind of walkthrough on the workflows, all that software that you got as part of your suite package.
Sweet deal.
Part of that sweet deal you got with all the different pieces of software, AutoCAD and Revit and Civil 3D along with InfraWorks and all those kind of things. If you've ever been curious about what those other pieces of software do, we're actually going to provide a day-long training session on each of those. So check our website.
October 29th and 30th.
October 29th and 30th, so it's coming out. October 29th will be the AEC, the Building Design Suite. The 30th will be the Infrastructure Design Suite. So feel free to contact us for more information.
If you wear costumes, you get extra points.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Extra imaginary points.
Yeah. Theme-related costumes. So that's all we have for today. Hopefully that was informative as to the sort of what is the action recorder used for. It's kind of a big picture, high-level overview of what it might get used for. But if you have further questions, maybe we can do a more in-depth webinar sometime in the coming future if we see some questions coming through on that. Thanks everybody for attending, and we'll see you next month for AutoCAD Answers.
Thank you.